Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the second episode of 2022 of the Noise Brigade. I am Bobby. He is Tom. Tom, how you doing?
I'm doing good, man. How are you, sir?
I cannot complain. Before we really get into the meat and potatoes of this episode, there's a couple things I wanted to shout out there. First thing is, well wishes and everything to Kara's dad, Joe Schiavo. He's currently hospitalized with COVID. Um, and my own grandmother, Jean Atkinson, she's actually just been hospitalized with COVID and pneumonia. So just wanted to say get well soon to both of them. Hopefully everything works out, and you guys are back out and about soon enough. Um, and then the second thing that we found out right before we went on was Bob Saget died. So big Eagles fan, big, Philadelphia born and raised. Um, Unconfirmed whether or not on the playground is where he spent most of his days, but just wanted to give a shout to him. Brought a lot of people a lot of joy. So thank you, and you will be missed.
Yeah, no, definitely another tough one there to kind of take. And young too, I think whenever you hit where we're at in our stage of our lives, you look at the 50s and 60s as they're young.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that's
absolutely.
it's a tough one.
And Danielle had made a good statement on this one. If you want to give her the props for that.
Yeah, yeah. She had said earlier this evening that last week we kind of all had lost America's grandmother and Betty White, and tonight we lost America's dad and Bob Saget, and that is a great way of putting it, and that rings very true. I mean, if you really think about Bob Saget's career in terms of how our life was, um, you know, we were kids when Full House debuted, so it made a lot of sense. Definitely, you know, one of those that's a tough one. I think because again, much like Betty White and some of these others, very beloved. Didn't matter, anything. I never another one of those that I never heard a bad word about.
Right. And it's funny too, because he was everywhere on television when we were little, between Full House and America's Funniest Home Videos, you know. And then as we got a little bit older and saw the movie Half Baked, we saw a completely different side of him.
Right. Yeah, we
Yeah.
saw the side that we weren't supposed to see.
Right.
The guy was a notorious, very dirty stand-up comedian. But when we're sitting there at like 7, 8, 9 years old, seeing him as Danny Tanner, or the ever lovable host of America's Funniest Home Videos, of basically parading videos out of people like getting hit in the nuts. Um, he's doing like really dirty material in clubs. We had no idea until the
Yeah.
half baked spot, really.
Right.
So,
Right.
I mean, that's what it was. But yeah, that's a tough one, man. I'm 65 years old. That's just oof.
And it happened in Florida, which just makes me hate the state even more.
Yeah, it's weird, and he had just started a pretty good sized tour as well. So, and I think his last Twitter, thing that said he had done like a 2-hour set, and that he would just loving being back on stage, and man, that's tough.
Yeah. So um we I touched on it kind of briefly, very, very briefly in the bit of a little eulogy that we gave to Bob, but he was a huge Eagles fan. And one of the things that I actually didn't know, I didn't realize he did a podcast with Lane Johnson.
uh, yeah, I had no idea.
Yeah,
That's a
yeah, he did an episode of a podcast with Lane Johnson, and he actually has his own Eagles card, like Eagles football trading card with Bob Saget on it.
oh that's
Yeah.
that's pretty cool. And I tell you what, that's a great lead in for what we're gonna do, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. So today is, well, Is there a game tomorrow night? Because I'm getting thrown off because apparently there's
No,
a
we're I think we're done. Regular season, I believe, wraps up tonight,
yeah.
which is today, recording on January 9th. But here's the crazy thing. You're not crazy in assuming that there is a Monday night game
Next week.
next Monday. Yeah, which
Right,
is
right.
unheard of. This is new, and this coincides with the fact that there's now a week longer extra, in the season. Um, and so now we have what they've termed a super wild card weekend, meaning that we have now a Monday night game playoff.
Right. And now what to you is more wild about this, and not no pun intended, but let's look at, we had certain expectations for the Eagles this year, you and I both. Um, and we're going to go through that. We're going to go through it and kind of match it up to what actually happened. But spoiler alert, for as bad as the Eagles were at one point when we went on here and I unleashed holy hell on them, they turned it around
Yes,
and
they
they made
did.
the
I
playoffs.
maybe they listened to that.
They might
Um,
have.
it's very possible that your rant like sent him in a different direction.
Well, between that and then the fans at the stadium all in unison chanting "Run the ball," we bullied them into becoming the number one rushing team in the league. You realize that? All these anti-bullying campaigns, and the Philadelphia sports fan bullied their team into being a playoff team.
Into actually saying, "Hey, you might want to do the most essential play in football."
Right, right. So we're gonna go through this. There's a lot to unpack, man. Really, there really truly is. Now, the overall totals that we had, I had the Eagles finishing 11-6. You had them at 10-7. Um, they were a little bit lower. They finished at 9-8 and still made the playoffs. Now we had both also said, you said you see them as a 9 or 10 win team. I had said I could see them finishing anywhere from 8-9 to 11-6. So, we both hedged our bets a little bit, but you were a lot closer to, you said 9 or 10. I had quite a bit of leeway in there. So you were more on point. And quite frankly, I'm surprised at how accurate we were with some of these games.
Yeah, yeah, and I completely went into this back several months ago, right at the beginning of the season. Really with, I did my, obviously did my research. I look, it wasn't like I didn't know exactly who we were coming into the season with. I was, and if you listen back, I was more concerned about the other teams, in our division, and not, and really kind of giving probably more credence to them than I ever was the Eagles. I look, and I still kind of think this in my mind. I'm honestly shocked that they made the playoffs. Um, because back in August, that's why I said like I would make the playoff predictions because I didn't know, um, didn't think they'd actually make it. That's kind of why I said that.
Yeah.
And that's true. I really didn't. And I think you and I went back and forth on Jalen Hurts, and we can get into that during this. Um, I really wanted to give him the full season. I really wanted to see what he gave. And well, look, I'm not saying anything. He made the playoffs. Carson Wentz didn't.
Right. And their teams had the same exact record.
Exactly. It's crazy. So it's really hard to. That's why I said like I think when I went into our prediction episode, I was really focused in my mind anyway. Maybe it didn't come out that way on the podcast, but I was really focused on other teams, particularly division teams. So yeah, I'd love to break this down. Kind of let's run back through, and we don't have to give any of these games unless they really stick out in our minds any credence necessarily. But hey, what do we both say, and what ended up happening? I think that'd be a
Yeah.
fun way to kind of roll back our August. It was an August 31st is when he posted it.
Okay.
So yeah, August 31. So we posted this August 31st, 2021. and we're kind of rolling back, our predictions here. I think this is a fun one
Yeah.
to really revisit.
All right, so let's get started. So the first game of the season was Eagles at Falcons. Um, Now I actually had them losing. Um, you had them winning, and boy, did this game start the season off in a with some overreaction. So they won the game. Not only did they win the game, they beat them 32-6. So
Yeah.
it was a complete and utter drubbing. And coming out of that game, I felt damn good about this team.
Yeah, and I distinctly recall looking at this on paper, and I was like, and I said this. I said I have no rationale for this, but I thought they would start hot, and I did think it would be a close game, but boy, was I wrong on that. They killed them.
Yeah.
You had mentioned this too, and really kind of played through the season. Um, Boy, Kyle Pitts, man, well, I like him.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he's going to be interesting going forward. So, but yeah, no, that was an interesting one. I really had no. I figured, kind of thought they would win, but not by 26 points.
Right. So then we go into week 2, and we have the Niners in Philly. And I had the Eagles. This is where I thought the Eagles would roll. And you thought so as well. And we were both wrong.
Ooh, yes,
So the
yeah,
Eagles dropped a close one. It was 17-11. The Niners won. Um, and the Niners ended up being a 10-17. They're a good football team. Um, but that one was not one of our better predictions.
no, and that was a weird game. It was a really weird game, particularly coming off the drubbing of the Falcons. Um, you know that that one was, I think it was a very winnable game. But to me, really looking back on all these games, that was probably the weirdest one of the season to me.
Yeah,
Um, just very strange. I really felt that they could have taken that one, but it is what it is, and they didn't. Um, Boy, I was wrong on that one. Yeah, I thought they would
yeah,
take that one
and
by a couple touchdowns.
yeah, and that one kind of led us into a little losing streak here. I'm not gonna say too much about this next game, other than
Yeah.
it was Eagles at Cowboys, where I finally figured out what the Eagles were going to do, and I had us losing, um, and we lost, and it was disgusting. It was 41-21, and let's move on.
Yeah,
Uh,
I had them losing too, and
yeah.
I agree. Let's just go to week 4.
So then we get to another one that I'd like to just flush, as Mr. Hertz would say. Um, Chiefs at Eagles. Now we both knew what was going to happen in this game. There was no big surprise. Um, you know, the surprise is that the final score was as close as it was, even though the game wasn't. But it was
No,
42-30.
yeah,
Kansas City ended up beating us. Um, Not a great game. It was pretty bad. And at this point, though, we are where I thought we would be at 1-3, and I'm
right,
not happy
right.
about it. But it was pretty bad. Um, so then we go into Carolina, and Carolina is where we get off the schneid. We win 21-18. Um, we both had this one as a win. Um, what were you so compared to what you thought it was going to be? What about at this point? Where did you think? What were you thinking?
Well, look, I thought the Eagles would be better off record wise, and mainly because I thought they would beat the 49ers at this point. Um, the thing that really shocked me here was that I was actually kind of spot on this one. I said that the Eagles will pull out the win, but it would be a close game, which it was. It was separated by a field goal. Um, you know, I think at this point in the season, because they had essentially gotten, crushed by the Cowboys. And look, the Chiefs game was not close. I know the score was within 12 points, but the game, you and I watched that one. That was not close at all.
Right.
That might as well have been 4 or 5 touchdowns the way that one felt. And look, they barely beat the Panthers, which are a very bad team. Look, defensively, yes, the Panthers are great. Don't get me wrong, probably top 2-3 defense in the league. Offensively, it's just a terrible team, especially at this point in the season. And, look, I just really thought that, at this point in the season, the Eagles may have been better based on previous games. And that did not ring true. But they won this one. So, then we moved to Tampa.
Yeah. So, again, another game where we basically had them losing. I don't think either of us thought that it was going to be a close game. It was better than the game against the Chiefs, and the scoreboard bears that out too. But it was not a good game, and it wasn't even as close. Even though it was 28-22, still wasn't as close as that score would lead you to believe.
Right.
So at this point, we've been going out. The offense has been trying to throw the ball 100,000 times a game, hasn't been working. The fans are getting frustrated, and the fans start chanting, "Run the ball, run the ball," and it was interesting. It was interesting because from this point forward, we start seeing. We don't not necessarily against the Raiders in week 7, but in week 8 against the Lions, we start seeing a change in the Eagles offense. So week 7, we go to Vegas and we get destroyed. And again, another score where actually I shouldn't say we get destroyed because it was close. It was fairly close. There was a point where the Eagles could have won this game, but they let why can I never remember which Carr is the quarterback?
It's Derek Carr. He's the younger.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So I always want to call him David or Daniel or any other name than Derek.
Yeah, no, it's Derek. Yeah, Derek. Look, and you're right. I mean, you said it felt like they got destroyed. They did. Look, this is a Raiders team that was coming off of, I believe this was the week or two after Chucky gets the boot. And then, this is all kind of in the sense of the time the Raiders really went through some stuff this season. And I'm not saying the Raiders are a bad team. I do not want to say that.
No,
there's a lot of talent there. Between the Josh Jacobs and the Hunter Renfros of the world, they have a lot of talent. My thing is that I am in complete agreement. This felt like they got drubbed. It was an 11-point game. That's not what to me. That's not what the scoreboard bared. I think the Eagles were on par with what the Raiders could bring at that point in the season, and they just did not have it. And I think a lot of that bears out to going back to the Panthers game. Look, they barely beat the Panthers. Not a great team. So it was no surprise that they, just didn't show up here in Vegas, against the Raiders. Yeah, I mean, just not good. And at this point in the season, after week 7, the Eagles are legitimately 2-5. And you and I both had them at 3-4. So we're pretty close. But then, you know what? Things kind of turned around. We got lucky here, and I think we both called this in our predictions because guess who we get to play?
We get the wonderful, the world-beating Detroit Lions, and yeah, man, this is where we start to turn it around, and this is, a lot of people thought it was fool's gold. And obviously, with as badly as we beat them, yes, we're not going to go out. This is the Eagles team that we have is not going to go out and do this to everybody. But this is where Nick Sirianni and Shane Steichen realized, hey, I can run the ball. We have running backs that can run the ball. We have an offensive line that is basically made of road graders. And we can just plow through people and run the ball. Imagine that. And guess what they do? They go out and they beat the Lions 44-6.
Yeah, that was a fun one. You and I both called this one. They just absolutely plowed them. Um, the interesting thing was we both know that you called them hapless, and I already said the Lions were awful at this point in the season. That was not going to be a surprise to anybody. Um, we knew that going into it. Now, granted, luckily we didn't play them toward the end of the season.
Yeah, because they
Because
actually picked it up after that.
yeah, they figured it out. Um, you know, so we got lucky, but yeah, we knew that they were not going to be good at this point, and yeah, so 44-6. And then this was an interesting one. I think this game to me kind of felt more. This is where the team's kind of at this point compared it to the Carolina game. And I only say it's because the Chargers, to me, after watching a lot of Sunday night games, Monday night games, whatever, because the Chargers got a lot of play on both. Boy, they're just a good team, and the Eagles within a field goal here. So they lose week 9, 27-24. But what were your take on week 9 against the Chargers?
Yeah, and if I remember correct, and I could be wrong, that I could be thinking of a different game, but this game, the Eagles were well within their rights to win this game, and they were in it to the end, and it just ended up being that the Chargers got the Chargers ended up getting the ball back and kicked the field goal to win it,
Right.
and it very easily could have gone the other way, and you're looking at the Eagles winning this game, finishing 10-7, which isn't huge on in the standings or anything like that, but it eliminates one of the biggest issues with what people say about this Eagles team, which is, oh, who did they beat? Well, that would have been a signature win that you could hang your hat on, which they don't currently have, because you're not going to count that 44-6 against the Lions for anything other than a win.
Right.
But it showed that the team didn't give up. That's one thing you can say. You can say a lot of things about this team. You can say a lot of things about the coaching staff. But one thing you cannot say is that this team gave up on the coaching staff. They had 100% buy-in from day one to now. And that's so important in any sport, but especially in football. And that's something that talent can't mask. You know, if you have the most talented team in the world, but they don't believe in what their coach is selling, they're not going to be a good team.
Right. No kidding. And this was a close game. They could have taken this one, but again, by a field goal. But you talk about statement wins, and yeah, you're right. This whole season was just basically get your wins where they can, which they did for the most part. And this next game was kind of like that, except to me, really watching, some of the games the Broncos played. My goodness, boy, they had some flashes of brilliance, and the Eagles, boy, they kind of took them to task, didn't they?
Yeah. So the next game we have up, the Eagles end up winning 30-13 in Denver, which, you know, honestly, any kind of win in Denver, I'm taking as a big win because they're a good team, regardless of what their record says. They have a good defense. They have a good offense. Granted, their offense was, led by Teddy Bridgewater, who, this was the week when I think it was Darius Slay had the interception and he was running it back, and Teddy Bridgewater said, never mind. I'm just going to let him go. Instead of trying to tackle him. So, there's a couple things you could say in there, but no, man, it's, you know, the Broncos are a good team, and to be able to go to Mile High and beat them, regardless, like I said, regardless of the fact they finished the season 7-10, they were a good team. Eagles went
Oh,
in, beat them, and it was the continuation of what we've seen, the evolution of this team.
right. And here's why I say, like, look, the Broncos, like, they beat the Cowboys in November 30-16. All right. They beat the Chargers 28-13. So the Broncos were not this they're not a rollover.
Right.
They also crushed the Lions 38-10. But look, they're not a rollover team here. This was I think for the Eagles, if you're talking about statement wins, at this point in the season, this was it. Because they at least were able to beat a team, as you said, look, offensively, we could talk about that another day. Defensively, very good. And in Denver, yeah, and to roll out with a 17-point victory. So at this point, week 10, the Eagles are legitimately 4-6, and you and I both had them at 5-5. So we're not far off.
Right.
Week 11, though, we go back to Philly, and the Saints come into town.
So
So what
I also
happens
want to
there?
point out that we've been riding a win streak here also. Um, you have so going back, you actually had been hitting the nail on the head for quite a while on this season. I actually have the past couple weeks we both were right about the Saints game too, where the Saints come marching into town and then they go limping out. Um, and
Yep.
this was a game where, you know, let's face it, the Eagles did get lucky on some of these playing some of these teams when they played them. Bottom line is you got to play who's on the schedule. It doesn't matter if you beat St. Mary's School for the Blind 17 times or if you beat, the New England Patriots with Tom Brady and all of their greats resurrected 17 times. The fact of the matter is, if that's who's on your schedule, that's who you have to beat. And your record is what it is based on who you played. So even
No,
though
no, exactly. No, you're right.
we went up against a Saints team that was missing some weapons, it was missing their quarterback, we still, we jumped out of the gates in the first half and just absolutely blitzed them, just knocked them on their butts, and then kind of slowed off, kind of took our foot off the gas pedal a little bit in the second half, and it showed. But the scoreboard still at the end of the game said 40-29 Eagles.
Yeah. And look, I called this early on when we did our predictions. Look, with Drew Brees not being there, I'm not saying that the Saints were going to be like completely a pushover this season. But look, they just, to me, just not, well, I'm not going to say a bad team, but just not a whole lot going for them. But here's the funny thing. They finish with an identical record to the Eagles.
Yeah,
And guess what happens? This win here makes the difference for basically us or the Saints making the playoffs. Right?
right.
I mean,
Yeah,
so there's 2 weeks in a row. If you want to call them for the 2021 season, you beat the Broncos, who Broncos beat the Cowboys and the Chargers, and then you beat the Saints, because if you don't beat the Saints at this point in the season, you don't make the playoffs. Whether and I'm saying that based on record or just based on because they're both 9-8 teams. Yeah. Really interesting, isn't it?
yeah. Hey, and
There's your statement in week 10 and 11.
let's look at this too. So going back to the Raiders and the Chargers, they're playing tonight. They're both going into that game at 9-7. One of
Right.
those two teams is going to finish with the same exact record as the Eagles, and they're going to miss the playoffs.
Yep. Yeah. It's
Now,
interesting.
unless they tie, if they tie, they both go to the playoffs and they both finish at 9-7-1, which is technically better than what the Eagles' record is. But that's neither here nor there.
Right.
So then let's move on now to week 12. And this is where we both got this one wrong. And I don't think either of us could have seen. Oh no, I'm sorry. You got this one right. I got it wrong, but neither I don't think either of us saw this one coming in this fashion, especially with how the season had gone for the Giants up to this point.
Yeah. Look, I'm not going to say that I'm Nostradamus here. I don't know why, but I guess it's because um, I thought in my mind that the Giants were going to be a lot better than they were. I really thought this was a 3-team race. Well, uh, I'll say this. I remember saying that like I really thought that the Giants would be the team that would throw the wrench into the Washington, Philadelphia, Dallas playoff race. Um, and look, that's a cheap way of putting it because look, they're all, the only teams in the division. But I honestly thought that, and Yeah, I somehow oddly picked this one as an Eagles loss early on back in August, and that's exactly what happened. Weird game though. This is another one that they could have taken.
Yeah, this one, God, this game was just bad. There's just no other way to put it. It was just a bad game. The Giants win 13-7. The Eagles looked like they completely forgot how to play football. Um, it was just, I can't say anything else other than it was bad. And it turns out that part of the reason that it was so bad is because Jalen Hurts hurt his ankle. Um, and so I guess he couldn't move around, as well. And he just did not look comfortable in the pocket. He did not look comfortable doing anything. We ran the ball, but we couldn't get the ball in the end zone. And it was just a disgusting game. Better left in the past. But it was the first of back-to-back games for the Eagles in MetLife Stadium, where in Week 13 they met with the Jets, and we got a little taste of Minshew mania.
Yeah, this was a weird one in the sense that we didn't have Jalen, but we both knew that look, they're playing the Jets.
Right.
Um, this wasn't gonna be anything other than a win.
Now,
Reg-
we shouldn't say that though, because the Giants and the Jets finished with the same exact record, 4
that's
and 13.
true, but it's still the Jets.
True.
Look, I will I'll give credence to the Giants when I can. I hate to say that. I will never give credence to the Jets ever, just because they're just that bad of a team. Um, even though they finished the same record as the Giants. And I think Zach Wilson's a great young quarterback. Um, the Coming into this, look, I wrote I wrote this down. I said it. Look, it's the Jets. That's it.
Yeah.
The Eagles at this point win this game 33-18. They moved to 6-7. I said they moved to 7-6. So look, this was not a far off base track. We knew what was going to happen in this one.
Right.
It is what it is.
So then we had the bye week, and the bye week was extended because the next team up was the Washington football team, or should we say the Washington Commanders? And it seems like their team couldn't quite get a handle on the whole COVID thing. And so this game that was supposed to be played on a Sunday ended up getting played on a Tuesday. And we still won. So it wasn't close. It was domination by the Eagles. Um, I mean, the football team had how many players out? I know Tyler or Heineke was out. Their top running back was out. They had like a ton of people out on COVID. Um, and it was just a joke of a game. Eagles win handily. Um, I actually I had them winning this one. You had them winning this one. Any other notes on this? Although what I do want to say, I had in my notes for this game. Jake Elliott is having the best season since 2017, and I was right. He did have his best season since 2017. So
Ooh, ooh,
I I will
that's a good note.
I will I mean, that was a little prediction that I just happened to throw in there. I thought they were going to win the game on a Jake Elliott field goal. They didn't need it. So
Yeah,
you got any thoughts on this one?
that's a good note. No, I really don't. I've thought that would be a lot more of a kind of a blanket statement type game, like let's win by 2-3 touchdowns, not by 10 points. But it is what it is. That was my prediction back then. I kind of like that footnote you just said about Jake Elliott. That's pretty cool. And it could be in the something. But yeah, it is what it is. Look, I think the weird thing was with this season was they played both Washington games, not back to back, but very close. And it was at the tail end of the season. So that's kind of odd. And we'll get into week 17 here. But no, week 16, we play the Giants again, and we figured it out, didn't we?
Yeah, we got off to a slow start in this one, which ended up being, it seemed like it was the tagline for every game that the Eagles played towards the end of the season was we were getting off the slow starts, but second half we were just dominating teams. Um, we ended up winning 34-10 against the Giants. What I do like though is I'm looking at some of the notes that I put in here on some of this stuff, and due to injuries, we didn't play against Daniel Jones. We didn't play against Ryan Fitzpatrick. We ended up playing against a whole bunch of backups for these guys because everybody kept getting hurt. We didn't even get a chance to hurt them.
I know, and that's a big part of football. We both know that, and very well could have happened to the Eagles where everyone goes down with an injury, and this season turns out to be a 4 or 5 win season. Um, because that's part of football. That's what happens.
Right.
Sometimes the luck just doesn't fall with you. But look, we knew that the Eagles would, at least at this point, you would call them to be 10-5. I said they would be 9-6. Or in reality, they were 8-7. So we weren't far off base. And I think that's very telling as to where we really figured where they would be at this point in the season, honestly. So, we move on to week 17 and the Eagles go to Washington to play the Washington football team or is it Commanders? Is that really the next team name?
I wish it was. I wish it would. We had a little text thread going back and forth, and I think one of us said that they should just steer into it and call themselves the Bullets or something like.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Yeah. That's right. You said the Bullets. I had said the Washington Generals for the Harlem Globetrotters nemesis.
Yeah, for the Harlem Globetrotters fans out there.
Yeah. So, either one I think would be appropriate, but I don't like Commanders. I feel like that's just such a stupid name. But for such a dumpster fire of a franchise, I guess it fits.
Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly fine with them calling themselves the Washington football team for the rest of eternity. It doesn't bother me. I think it's very what do they call that sport where they kick the ball around? Where they have is it soccer? Is that what it is? No, that's what we call it. Yeah, the Europeans have the right name for it.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, but seriously, Washington football team actually sounds like a legitimate American team name. Yeah, right. It does. It does. And I think that they should probably, call themselves that for the rest of the time. But just because I don't really know what fits. I don't like the Commanders. I hate that. I just don't. It's really, it's just boring.
I think they should just be. I think they should just move.
Yeah, that's it.
Just go somewhere else. Just go be like the Maryland, I don't know, the Maryland Crab Eaters or something.
The Maryland Crabs.
Yeah, go be the Maryland Crabs.
There you go. we fixed it.
Yeah, that's what it reminds me of though. It's funny, Washington football team. It reminds me of when Madden didn't have the NFL license, and they just had to be like the Washington football team. Like that's what it is. It's Washington lost the NFL license, and now they just are Washington. That's it.
And that's exactly right. I mean, I don't know, man. I just really wish that I just really wish the NFL would hire who's in charge of that? Is it the NFL or is it the team themselves?
No, it's the team themselves.
Okay. So they need, come on, Commanders, someone has to be more creative.
They should. What they should have done is they should have hired the guys from Queer Eye for the Straight Guy, and they could have had them come in and do everything.
Yes, they should have. That'd been a great episode.
Dude, listen, I have never watched that show in my life. Hand to God, if they came in and did that, I would watch that show.
Dude, it would just be fun. But it has to be original guys though.
Yeah, no. And I'm not making a joke here. I'm being dead serious. I'm not trying to make fun of those people or make fun of the show or any of that stuff. No, dude, I would totally watch that.
Yeah, no, I look, I just it just needs to be more fun to me. It needs to be a more interesting. I don't know. I just I don't dig the Commanders at all, and supposedly like they're coming out with a name February 2nd. Is that right?
I have no idea.
Okay, so I heard that like somewhere along the way that their official release on the name was February 2nd. I could be wrong. It may as well be the Commanders. I'm sure it might be, but um, I think ultimately in their best interest, they should come out and say, "Look, we made people wait for 2 years. Our team name is going to be the Washington Football Team," and leave everything the same. And that would be like the best thing ever.
Or even if they did like the Commodores or like not Commodore 64.
Oh, that'd be
Oh
awesome.
no, that's what they should. No, that's it right there.
Commodore
Washington
64.
Commodore
Say
64s.
yes. All
That's
right.
book it.
I feel like there's some memeing or some photoshopping we'll have to do.
Send your pictures to dear old Captain Noah. All right, so nobody except for us is going to get that.
No,
Um,
no. All right. So
all
after
right, yeah, let's
we beat the Washington Commodore 64s 20 to
yeah, we beat the Washington
16.
Commodore 64s, and then their stadium started falling apart because apparently it's made out of recycled Commodore 64s.
Yeah, wasn't that crazy? So let's kind of catch people up here. So Jalen Hurts is walking back toward the locker room at the end of the game with some other players and personnel, whatever. And yeah, so there's a bunch of fans that are kind of hanging out as they normally would at the end of the game. And right before Jalen gets back into what would be considered the underbelly of the stadium, if you will, toward the locker room, yeah, the railing just kind of collapses. It's crazy.
Yeah, and luckily nobody was seriously hurt. But like a handful of fans fell on our starting quarterback.
Yeah, yeah, no kidding. And I don't know if did you see Jalen had penned a letter to who do you write that to?
He wrote it to to Washington, to the
Yeah, yeah,
team.
yeah, yeah. To the team themselves. Yeah, and it was very eloquent, like the way he put it. And it basically it was like, look, very thankful that no one got hurt, but something needs to be done. And he's right. I mean, come on, like if you look at that, and it's not like there were look, it wasn't like people were sitting there, kind of piling on the barricades and kind of it wasn't akin to crushing concert goers, if you will. It was
Right.
just typical people leaning against the railing at a stadium, and you basically had very cheap, what I would consider aluminum railing on a multi-million-dollar whatever plus stadium, and just boom, gone, right?
Right. And what was cool to me that I mean the only good that came out of it is you saw Jalen Hurts how genuine he is and just what a good guy he is, helping people up, taking selfies with them, trying to make sure everybody's okay before he goes back into the locker room. He
Oh
takes
yeah, yeah.
what could have been a terrible situation and tries to put some silver lining on it.
Yeah, yeah, no kidding. And he stand-up guy there. He figured it out as far as the PR part. And I'm not saying that like, that's he's trying to like save face. He didn't have to. He's the one that pretty much got fallen on.
Right.
But he, stand-up guy, I really do. And I think it's a good moment for him in the sense of, hey, this happened. How do you get better from this? And I think he proved it. He really did. We don't have to really talk too much about what happened Saturday night yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, here's the deal. So for the Eagles, literally nothing to gain yesterday, Saturday. Um, Obviously, it's a game against Cowboys, and I said this on every single social media outlet I have. I don't care if it's preseason. I don't care if it's postseason. I don't care if it's regular season. I don't care if it's irregular season. I want to beat the Cowboys every single damn time I play them. But in this one situation, I'm okay. I don't want to say I'm okay with the fact that we lost to them because it means that they swept us this season, and I hate that. I hate the idea that the Cowboys beat us more than I hate the idea the Cowboys beat us once, let alone twice in the same season. That pisses me off. But the Eagles had nothing to gain from winning yesterday. What's the best that happens to them? They move up to the 6th seed. Well, guess what? What does the 6th seed get you? Absolutely nothing. So they rested their starters. They let Jason Kelce go out for the opening snap so that his consecutive game streak moved up to 122 and continued. They had Devontae Smith on the field so that he could get the Eagles rookie receiving record. And then on offense, aside from Kelce for the one play, and then a couple of the receivers. So Devontae Smith, who then came out of the game, they actually had to take his helmet because he tried to sneak back onto the field. But aside from Devontae Smith, you didn't really have any starters playing in that game. And on defense, dude, they had no starters playing on defense. And it was good because number one, we kept our players from getting hurt. Number two, yeah, you know what? Dallas came out and they beat us, and it wasn't close. I mean, it was close till the end of the half. We had a shanked punt. Our special teams wasn't there except for whoa, hold on, no, our return game was there with Huntley.
Yes, Jason Huntley. Yes,
yeah, but the rest of the team, it was all backups and third stringers and call-ups from the practice squad and stuff. And we were giving Dallas a run for their money for almost the entire first half.
Yes, we were. I had that game on for, I'll be honest with you. I try to watch as much Eagles football as I can. I always find it really hard whenever, there's nothing to play for. First half was, run for the money. And I will be sincere here. I gave it up on the second half because I knew – that this was not going to look good after a while. So, look, there's a point of no return at some point. But that's what they did. They didn't have nothing to gain. Look, the Cowboys, they are what they are. They played whoever they played to beat us 51-26. Look, that wasn't the game though. To me, look, the Eagles basically played a bunch of second stringers in the first half and kept it really, really close. I think there's a lot that tells you a lot about the team right now.
Right. And that's the thing. I watched, hand to God, watched the entire game from start to finish. And it was nice because it was a reprieve from watching the Flyers game. But I watched from start to finish, and the Cowboys kept their starters in for 3 quarters. How lucky are they that they didn't end up with any kind of injuries? The only starters they rested were Trayvon Diggs, the cornerback, and Micah Parsons. They're all-world edge rusher. And you know what? Yes, maybe the Eagles offense doesn't beat up their defense as much as they did if Micah Parsons is playing the game, because he is a unique presence. And he does offer some stuff that nobody else on their defense could do. But, dude, they were running the ball at will on that team. And they didn't have their starting offensive lineman. And you know what? Gardner Minshew, for everything that, for people can say whatever they want about that game, Gardner Minshew proved that he belongs on this team as a backup quarterback based on, if nothing else, the fact that he showed you that with literally nothing around him, he can still make plays on offense.
Yeah,
and that's what we need. If we're gonna have a backup quarterback, how many teams in the league do you see that their backup quarterback goes down? I mean, their starting quarterback goes down, and the backup comes in, and a team that has legitimate playoff hopes and legitimate Super Bowl hopes is like, well, shoot, we're screwed now. Not with Gardner Minshew. I'm not saying that Gardner Minshew is going to step in and be the second coming of Peyton Manning or Dan Marino or whoever, but he's good enough to take a good team and win games.
Yeah. Oh, he is. And I think he's proved it. He certainly proved it before he was an Eagle. I think this is a brilliant move. Look, and I think that's a good segue into what we're going to get into here to close out our show. we made no playoff predictions early on necessarily in August because we were just talking about the season. At least I didn't. I certainly
I
don't
did.
remember you doing it. Did you? I don't remember. Did
Well,
you?
I just said they'd make the playoffs.
Okay. But as far as like, let's get into um, direct, exact. Now we know what's happening. So I'm gonna roll back the tape here until week 6. The Eagles played the Buccaneers, and they lost 28-22. Well, guess what? As I saw it tonight, last I looked, the Eagles get to draw the Buccaneers in the playoffs. Am I right in that?
That is correct. It is
Oh,
official.
okay. So the Eagles get the Buccaneers. Obviously, it's going to be in Tampa. I don't like it. I don't like it one bit. We have 2 things here, and I'll say this on the side. One, we have no Antonio Brown. That's another episode or another season for another day. But 2, we have to also now contend with Rob Gronkowski. Love him or hate him, yeah, he's a pretty good football player. So, but and the only note I have on this is there a possibility we win this game coming out? Certainly. Is it likely? No. I don't have anything else. I hate to say this, just knowing that you're taking the first round of the playoffs and you get to face the defending Super Bowl champions with Tom Brady as the quarterback. And you've already played them earlier this season and you lost. I don't like it. I don't like our chances. And that'll be my playoff prediction, is that we certainly do not get out of the first round. What say you?
So here's what I'm going to say. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, we're going to win the Super Bowl. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, we're going to get blown out in the first round. What I'm going to say is a couple things. Number one, there's a reason they play the game. Number 2, 41-33.
Okay.
That's all I'm going to say. 41-33. You know what the significance of that number is, right?
Hey, man.
For those of you who don't know, that's the final score the last time the Eagles played Tom Brady in the playoffs, and that would be Super Bowl 52 when your Philadelphia Eagles beat Tom Brady.
That's right. No, you're right.
And so it's honestly, that matchup doesn't scare me as much as, and I hate to say it, doesn't scare me as much as playing the Cowboys in the first round would have. Because I think the Cowboys coming in, if we played them in the first round, right after that game that we played them, I think they beat us. And I don't necessarily know that it's close. I also know that the last time we played them in the wild card round after we played them in the regular season, they killed us. Now, granted, that was back when Donovan McNabb was still here and Andy Reid and everybody, but I just don't like the track record. But on any given Sunday, anything can happen. And I watched Tom Brady and the Bucs almost get their butts handed to them by the Jets. So I'm willing to roll with it.
Yeah, no. I look, in my head, I think it's revenge time for Tom Brady. No, I don't know. I just think the Buccaneers are more well built than the Eagles are, and I hate to say that. That's just how I feel. I don't think it's going to be a blowout, but I certainly don't see it being maybe a 10-point game, and just not being a close game, if you will. Again, not a blowout, but always within a score or two, and just not going to be be a fun watch, but not going to be a closely contended game, and that'll end the playoffs for us. And I hate to be that way with it, but I think that's just where I felt, and I think that's where I felt in August. That's why I didn't want to give any playoff predictions then, and I'm honestly surprised that they've made it this far, and kudos to them for making it, because I certainly didn't really believe they would, but here they are. Look, 9-8. He snuck in. Who knows? Maybe I'm completely wrong, and I hope I am.
Hey, well, let's look at it this way. You know what? I'm not saying they're going to go on a huge run, and I'm not saying that they're not going to win a game. I mean, who knows? We really, honestly, truly do not know, and that's why they play every game. But let's look at it this way. If I'd have told you when the Eagles were sitting at 2-5 and Nick Sirianni was being lambasted, people were making fun of him for his press conference when he got hired. They're making fun of him for all the different things that have gone out through the year. The flower speech, you know, I, and people were questioning Jalen Hurts and what he was going to do and whether he was good enough to be a quarterback. And before we go any further than that, let me just say, absolutely 100% Jalen Hurts has earned a second year as a starter. I'm not saying he's the answer going forward, for the rest of the decade, but dude has earned this next year to show his growth and what he can do. But if I'd have told you at 2-5, this Eagles team makes the playoffs and has become the number one rushing team in the NFL, you'd have taken it, right?
Yeah, yeah, oh yeah. Look, I think my love for Jalen Hurts was pretty well given through the episodes we've done here. I was one to say to give him a chance. Um, Look, I don't know what happens, um, but I will say this: it's a nice gift. You know, we get an extra football game out of this at least.
Yeah,
Um, and whether that's just the way the stars aligned, um, I I don't know. So as much as of a pessimist as I am rolling into this, um, they made it, and I'm excited to see what happens on Super Wild Card Weekend.
absolutely. And I mean, honestly, no matter how it turns out, and I've never been a big moral victory guy, even when I played, you know, I could feel crappy about wins. If we didn't do something as a team right, or I didn't do something right as a player, I didn't take any moral victories ever. A victory is a victory. A win is a win. There's no such thing as winning and losing. But that being said, it is absolutely invaluable experience that this team, this quarterback, and this coaching staff is getting right now by making the playoffs this early on in their run. And who was it? It was Brent Selleck, I think, who in his rookie year or his second year, they went to the NFC Championship game. And he thought, oh, this is great. This is how it's going to be every year. He didn't make the NFC Championship game again until the Eagles won the Super Bowl. So you never, ever take a shot at the playoffs for granted. Doesn't matter what your record is going in, because once you get in, anything can happen. Probably, what was it, 10 years ago or so, when or more than 10 years ago, when the Seahawks got in at 7-9 and they ended up winning a first round game. Who's to say, if things would have broken right the next week, they could have gone on an even bigger run. There's always a chance for every team that makes the playoffs. Every team that makes it belongs there, and there's a reason they're there.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. The Brent Selleck reference is great. Um, yeah, I think that's a great way to close it out. There's a reason you're there. Um, I don't know. I don't have anything else on that, man. You got anything else for this?
Well, on that note, we are going to be, when we post this, we are going to be posting a playoff pick'em on ESPN. So we'll be posting that link on the podcast's Facebook page and on the Twitter, and soon to come the YouTube page. So be on the
Yeah.
lookout. And till next week, we have been the Noise Brigade. make sure you're staying safe. Give your loved ones a hug. And as always, go birds.